Alright, well, it should be time for you to build some legs for your cornhole boards. So, my name is Scott, Cornhole Collective. If you'd like, you can go over to Instagram and follow me at mossboards and message me there if you have any questions or want to order some nice boards for yourself. If you're building your own, this is phase 3. So at this point, you should have some nice finished tops attached to some nice finished frames. And now we're going to build some legs. There's a bunch of different ways to build legs. This is how I like to make legs. It's simple, it's straightforward. They're not going to wobble. So many things can go wrong when you're making legs. Let's just follow these steps, and if you have any questions, let me know. I like to use a 2x3 leg laid flat with a 1x3 leg brace. This way those legs fold and are still flush inside of the board when you close them up. You can go ahead and clean up these 2x3s. Sometimes they're a little messy and rough, so sand those down. If you have a planer or a table saw, you can slice the faces off of those. But clean up those boards and then cut them down to 13-inch lengths. Just a nice square cut, 13 inches. But you're going to take those 13-inch legs and you're going to drill your bolt holes through one end. Make sure that it's centered on the leg, of course. And I use a 3/8 inch bolt that's 3.5 inches long. And make sure you drill all those bolt holes as close to center as you possibly can. If you want to make a little jig for yourself as a guide to drilling those holes, that would be best. Alright, now this is a critical step. You want to make sure that your bolt holes are placed exactly in the same position on both sides of your board. I use a little piece of plexiglass with a small hole drilled through it as a guide. And then I just drill a nice little pilot hole on both sides of the frame in the exact same position. And as far as where you want the bolt hole to go, that depends on what kind of rake you want on your leg. So hold one of your legs up to the board in position and then use a pencil through the 3/8 hole and mark where you want that hole to go. Drill the hole, make yourself a little template, and then use that template as a guide for your bolt hole pilot hole on both sides of your boards. Okay, so we've got all of our pilot holes drilled on all of our frames. Now, here are all these steps all together. So there's a bunch of them, you may want to make note of that. So take your 3/8 inch bit, double check that you're lined up, and I like to drill this out from both sides, from the outside and the inside. You tend to get a lot less tear out from the bit when you're not pushing it through the solid wood. So hit it from both sides, and your tear out should be minimal. Now you're going to take those 13-inch legs that you've prepped with the bolt holes in them, and you can round over the end so they turn nicely. I just use a belt sander to round those over. And you're going to temporarily put these legs in position with some wing nuts, whatever you've got. You're going to remove these in a minute to cut the feet at the right angle, but let's just temporarily put these legs in place and then double check that the legs are sitting at the correct angle. At the same angle, I should say. It doesn't have to be measured or anything. They should be at the angle that you like, but now you need to adjust to make sure that these legs are the exact same angle. So I have these little blocks in place from building the frames, and you can sand those down as needed to get those legs to sit at the exact same angle. Alright, now our legs are in place. Now we're going to measure and mark where we want to cut these legs. So to do this, you just put the board in position on top of a flat surface with either paint cans or a little rest that you make, like I did here. And you're going to hang those 13-inch legs over the edge of the table and position the board so it's exactly 12 inches high at the top. Okay, this is the only measurement you're going to have to make here, 12 inches on both sides. And once you've got it perfectly in position with the legs hanging over exactly 12 inches on both sides of the board, then you can mark your cuts for these legs, and you'll know that they'll sit in the right position because they're sitting at the same angle. They'll be nice and flat on the ground, super sturdy. I like to mark the cuts on the same side of both legs so I don't have to adjust my saw when I'm making these cuts. Okay, now that we've got our legs cut, we're going to come back and now we're ready to permanently install these. So use a couple washers on both sides of the leg to make sure that it's going to swivel nice and smooth. And of course you want to use some nylon lock nuts to make sure that these aren't going to loosen over time. Alright, now I like to put these extra washers next to the side of the leg and clamp those in place nice and tight. This is going to make sure that you have the right gap between the frame and the leg when you install your leg brace. Here's a better view of that. As you're installing your leg brace, measure from the top of the board the exact same distance to the leg brace, but I do like to center that brace right over the hole so it's nice and clean when they're closed. Alright, so a nice deep countersink that we're going to use are 1 1/4 inch screws to fasten this brace to the legs. And then you'll come back with some wood glue and some wood plugs, and you can go ahead and hammer those wood plugs in so it's nice and clean. You won't see any screw heads on these boards after they're finished. Alright, once you've got your wood plugs hammered in, glued down. Wipe the extra glue off because it's less you'll need to clean up later. And go ahead and sit those aside, let them dry while you build the other set of legs. Alright, so the keys here, number one, make sure that the bolt holes on the legs are dead center. Number two, make sure the bolt holes drilled into the frame are in the exact same position on both sides. Make yourself a little pilot hole template to do that. Temporarily position the legs and adjust them by sanding as needed so they're sitting at the exact same angle. Go ahead and put the legs on, mark where you want to cut the feet. Put them back on permanently, and then put your brace on. Now you get to come back with your sander and sand off those wood plugs. Nice and clean. Looks great. The next step, just to make sure that these match the frames and the legs, come with your 1/4 inch roundover bit and smooth off all the edges that you can of your leg brace on the inside and out. That way when you're opening these legs, they're nice and smooth, no sharp edges. Alright, well that's how I build the legs. If you've got any questions or comments, let me know. It's definitely not a fast process, but you want to make sure that the legs are nice and sturdy and they sit nice and flat on the ground with the top plane surface in 12 inches high position. Alright, next video we'll get to start finishing these boards and pretty them up a bit. Hope everybody has a great day. Talk to you later.